On December 18th of 2012, the game titled Pyongyang Racer was released for Windows and Adobe Flash by students of Kimchek University and North Korean IT company Nosotech, with it being published by Kureeyuh Tours, which is a company that specializes in tours to North Korea. The whole game was essentially an interactive advertisement designed to promote tourism of the country to Western and digitally active audiences. It was developed during the latter part of 2012 by a handful of students at the Kimchek University of Technology who worked with Nosotech. Nosotech was commissioned by Kureeyuh Tours in hopes that a Western audience would somehow play the game and summon the intention to go to North Korea, despite their government being one of, if not the, most West-hating countries in the eastern half of the globe. Its gameplay mostly centered around driving the Hwiparam 2, a car by Pyeonghwa Motors, a North Korean car company with their names directly translating to peace. And we all know how peaceful the North Koreans are. It's what seems to be a Sega Saturn style game, centered on racing since the bulk of the gameplay is the player driving laps around Pyongyang, while a stopwatch counts up in the top right corner of the screen, which what I think is a police officer, occasionally popping up on screen to give you tips on driving and taking up half the screen while doing so. Pretty useless considering only high-ranking government officials and people granted special access can drive in that country. A few rules of the road have to be followed, unlike in the real Pyongyang, where an absurd amount of rules have to be followed, even though your car is able to travel faster than their ICBMs. You have to hit barrels of gasoline every now and then to ensure that your fuel levels aren't depleted, which isn't surprising considering efficiency of North Korean engineering, except when it comes to weapons of mass destruction. Other objects need to be avoided or else points will be deducted from the player's score, such as the other cars in this game and this game in general. Knowing the game's graphics, you'd be surprised that it came out in 2012, and you'd be right to draw comparisons to 90s and early 2000s video games, with one reviewer even equating them to the Sega Saturns and another to the 32-bit era as a whole. But this was a deliberate decision by the publishers, as Kureeyuh themselves stated that the game was, quote, not intended to be a high-end technological wonder hit game of the 21st century, end quote. Which might lead you to think that they were going for a simpler, more retro arcade-esque feel. But I think they just didn't have the budget for better graphics technology due to the fact that they're, you know, in North Korea. The game rocketed in popularity on the internet, as people who didn't want to visit North Korea got to learn about the layout of Pyongyang. Its popularity was enough to take its site down for some users temporarily. Kureeyuh Games has manufactured t-shirts based on the game and then sells them on its official website. But despite the influx of people, the game was shown little mercy by video game critics and other sources, with Brian Ashcraft of the Kotaku blog saying that even though it did succeed his expectations of a game made in North Korea, it still wasn't a good game. Additionally, Slate also said that it, quote, hasn't made me want to visit North Korea anytime soon, end quote. Chris Welch of The Verge couldn't think of anything more positive to say about it than it just being the first known video game developed in North Korea. Fox News, wow, when have they ever reviewed video games, said it was, quote, fascinatingly awful. The textures on the buildings, cars, sky, and sidewalks look like they're stock PNGs of certain textures anyone could find for free with a quick Google search, and the road, grass, and water look like they were just colored in with whatever North Korean equivalent there is of MS Paint, and they obviously wanted to make this as a piece of praise for Pyongyang, since so much attention and effort was put into making sure the player understands what each monument is, despite the fact that you clip through whatever invisible box there is around the road and get sent back a few pixels to where you were before that. Big Rigs would be a more solid and entertaining experience than this, since the other cars actually move in the patched version of that, but it feels so lifeless without NPCs in this game, and it in no way makes me want to visit Pyongyang. So to wrap things up here, am I being too harsh on these game developers who only had so much to work with? Yeah. Nobody critiquing them would really be holding them to a AAA standard, and the whole project was supposed to serve as a demo Pyongyang, making it into a promo game as the final product. Whatever goal Kureeyuh or someone higher had in mind for this game, it's still fascinating to see a video game from North Korea.